Hey, what's up guys? In this video I'm going to show you how to install a fender onto your Honda Civic. Alright guys, to start out, if you are going to use a new fender, you're going to want to go ahead and transfer over this spacer here, and then also we're going to have to transfer over that plastic backing. Real quick, I'm just going to show you how to remove this. If you're reusing the same fender, then you can skip this part. But we're going to remove this screw. And then there's two tabs on the back here. You can just push them, squeeze them with your fingers, and pull out with your other hand to pop that loose. And then right here there's two tabs. You just take a flathead, and while you're giving a little pressure, pulling out on the top here, so pry on one tab and then pry on the other tab. And it pops those loose, and then it's swiveling right there where the screw goes in for the bumper, and then you just come around to the back side and again just pinch the two tabs. That's what they look like right there. So if you're installing it, I'm going to reuse the same fender. I'm just showing you guys. To install it, you want to put this in first, slide that in, and then click this one in first, and then this one. And then go ahead and put the screw back in. And then to swap out this back piece on the back of the fender, real simple. Just lift up on it. Both tabs go through the holes. Transfer it over to the new fender. Bring it in from behind here. Make sure they're both aligned. Push down. And both are seated on the tabs on the fender. And now we're ready to install the fender on the car. And so when we go to put the fender on, this little tab here in the bottom, we're going to start out by taking that tab and we're going to seat it into the fender liner right here, where there's this little area on the back of the fender liner here. We're going to seat it in there, and then we're going to roll it up towards the top of the mirror here. And the main areas of concern are going to be your door. You don't want to scratch your door while you're putting this on. And then also you got to be careful with this molding right here. When we're bringing it up, we don't want to hit this molding and scratch the molding. And it also can get bound up on the wheel liner as we're putting it up on there. And when it gets bound up, it's going to keep us from getting it to fit right. So we got to keep that in mind. So let's get it on there. All right, so I'm taking the fender and I'm putting that tab there on the bottom. And then I'm watching this right here, because you got to be careful. You don't want to scratch your door. I'm bringing it up. And you got to be careful with this molding. And our fender liner right here is bound up. The fender liner always wants to be, you always want to keep it on the outside of the fender, so it can get kind of back up and behind there. And so you just want to take it and roll it out onto the outside. Alright guys, so I just want to give you here a close-up. So the fender liner, see how it's all on the outside of the fender. You don't want to get up in behind there because it'll keep it from sitting right. And then you want the seal here. You want to make sure that the fender is not overlapping the seal on the glass right there. Alright, so we got it looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the door. You want to shut it slowly, just to see where we're at. Alright, so we're ready to put our first bolt in. Alright, so we're going to start out by fitting the fender to the door, and this line right here is basically all we're worried about at this moment. We want to make sure that the body lines match up. We want to make sure that the fender's out far enough from the door. We just want to make sure the gaps are correct. So what we're going to do first is we're going to observe the gap and then go over to the other side of the car, and you want to look at that side and see what it looks like. And you typically want to make a match unless there's something wrong with the other side. But typically I'd go to the other side, and if it looks fine, I'd like to make it match that other side. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to, I don't know if you can tell, but the body lines are off. So I'm going to pick up on the fender. I'm going to pick up on the fender, and I'm going to get those body lines to line up. And I also want to try to get my gap as close as I can get it. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a bolt into the bottom side here. And I'm also going to place my hand here to I'm going to try to hold it in position while I put this bolt in, keep it from moving. Alright, so we got one bolt in the bottom, and now we want to make the gap line up, and it's a little bit wider on top here. And so I'm going to check to make sure it's under this seal, and I'm going to want to bring it up. I'm picking up on it and kind of pushing back to close that gap up. And then I want to see what it's going to feel like to have to hold it there, because I want to hold it there when I open the door. I'm going to put that other bolt in here. So I'm going to hold it there. Alright, so it needs to push up and back a little bit when I open this door. So I push it up and back, and I'm going to start the bolt by hand. Get that threaded. And then I'm going to go ahead and tighten this bolt down. And now that I have that bolt tight, we want to check our gap. And typically you want to close the door. Close it kind of slow, because you just want to make sure you're not going to hit the fender or anything and scratch anything. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. You just want to check the body lines. Body lines look pretty good in person. The lighting might throw it off on the camera here. It may not look like it's lining up, but it lines up pretty good. And another thing to note is once you get your fender where you light the gap and your body lines are aligned here, the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your fender just sticks out just ever so slightly past your door. You never want your door to be farther out than your fender. You catch air, and you also catch rock chips that way. So they make special tools called spoons. You can pry on the door, or the fender rather. But there's some other tricks that you can do to get the fender to move. One is you can reach in behind here. If you need the fender to come out, you can reach in behind here and push out on the fender, and that can typically bend it just enough where it's slightly out from the door. If it needs to go in, if you feel that it's way out and it needs to go in, you never want to push out here. You always want to push right on the line and try to get like 2 thumbs right on that line, or your hands, and push in on it. That way you don't put dents in. If you're right here on the edge, you're not going to put any dents in. If you really got to get on it, you can open the door and you can grab a hold of the edge. You get your fingertips underneath there, and you can pull the fender out that way. But I think we're looking good. So this line is the first thing you want to worry about. We want to get that perfect, and then we'll move on from there. So now we're up here by the hood, and you can see the front of the fender here is completely loose. So I always start by taking the hood and you're just going to lower it down slowly, making sure not to hit the fender or anything. And you don't want to latch it all the way, but just press it down a little bit so it's a little bit closer to the fender. And you're going to observe the gap, and then same with the other side. And if you like the way the other side looks, assuming it looks like it should, then you're going to want to make this gap match. So right now we're just going to go for width. So we want to push down on the hood, and we just want to check the width. So it's kind of tighter in the back where it looks where it should be, but then in the front it gets a little bit wider. So we got 2 bolts that are on the front part of the hood, and then of course we have that one in the back there that we took out. So we're mostly going to try to get the whole thing to line up there. That looks pretty good right there. And then we're just going to put that 1 bolt in, and then we're going to double check. And then we're going to close the hood so I can see where we're at. Alright, that gap's just a little bit wider than I want it to be. So we're going to loosen the bolt just a little bit and then push it in farther. Then I'm going to check it again. Alright, that's a little bit better. And then there's always more adjustment. Once we go to put this bolt in, after we put the headlight in, you can see I'm moving it within the tolerance of this hole here, this bolt hole, how much it's changing it. So we can change a lot of the gap with that. So once you get the gap you like, you want to close your hood, and you're going to adjust your hood to the fender. And there's so many different ways you can adjust the gaps and tweak things to make them fit. I could almost do a whole video on just doing tweaking and adjustments to gaps to make things fit. But real quick, the real easy one is this bump stop here. You can twist it down. If you make it go down, the hood will want to sit lower. If you twist it out, the hood will sit higher on the fender. So that's how you adjust the height. Another trick is this bracket over here that holds the fender on. You can kind of bend that bracket in, or bend it out, or push it down to adjust things. So there's a lot of little tricks, but that's the gist of how you do that. So now we're going to move to the back, and we're going to go ahead and take care of this bolt here in the back. Alright, for aligning this gap back here by the pillar and the windshield, your gap should be fairly decent. If you follow the door gap, this gap should basically just kind of fall into place. It should be pretty good. If you don't like it, you can always loosen up the bolt earlier that we put in towards the front of the hood, loosen that up a little bit, and pull it forward or back to adjust that gap. But typically this gap's pretty good. But you do want to pay attention to how far it sticks out. A lot of times it'll want to lay lower than your pillar here. And again, just like the door, you want it to be slightly out farther than the pillar. And I know you can't see it because of the video, but it's laying in just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is when I go to tighten this, put this bolt in, I'm going to pull out a little bit as I tighten it, and that'll hold the fender outside of where the pillar is. So I'm going to get this bolt started first. And a little trick, when you go to put the bolt down in here, we're coming in vertically and the bolt's hanging upside down, so a lot of times it wants to fall out of your socket. So if you just take a tiny little piece of tape, you can just use like masking tape, this is just duct tape, and just put it on the bolt and then put your socket on. It'll hold the bolt in there really tight. That way it's not falling out and it's not falling inside here and you're going to lose it. And then once you get it tightened down, you can always remove the tape off later. So we'll get this bolt started. And you always want to be extra careful with this bolt here, because you're kind of coming in at a weird angle and you can't tell exactly where you're at a lot of times, and it's kind of easy to cross thread that bolt, so you just want to start it by hand and take your time. Alright, so I tighten it all the way down, and then I'm going to back it off just a little bit, pull out, and then tighten it back down. Alright, so that's perfect. It's out just enough where rocks and stuff aren't going to hit this pillar and chip up the very edge. And then you just want to take this, you want to tuck this back in behind the fender. And then we're going to come back around to the front of the fender here, and we're going to put this last bolt in here, and it's going to be this back hole right here. This front hole is for when you go to put the headlight in. So we'll start it by hand. And then we'll tighten it up. So that's it, guys. Your fender's on. Obviously you want to go ahead and snap in all the clips and everything that we took off from the inside of the wheel well and along the inside, and if you have a mud guard, you want to pull that stuff back on. But this is just a general video of how we do that and how you adjust the gaps on the door and everything around the front of the hood. Obviously I can't hit every scenario of what you might run into, especially if you're in a collision. But just remember, you can always loosen bolts, pull the fender, push the fender, raise the fender. You can use washers if you have to. You can adjust the hood. You just got to try to make things match as best as you can. But good luck, guys. Thanks for watching.